Welcome to Write to Publish, your go-to podcast for all things writing and publishing. I'm Karen Stanley, a 14 times published author and the founder of Mabel and Stanley Publishing. Join me as I share a multitude of tips and insights drawn from my own writing and publishing journey. We'll be hearing from some inspirational authors too, who will share their writing experiences and top tips for success. Each week, we'll learn about an aspect of writing, from composition to genre and from publishing to marketing. Listen in as we learn and chat about all things writing and publishing, and let's get you on the right path. Welcome to another episode of Write to Publish with me, Karen Stanley. And this week, I'm joined by the lovely Kat Lord, who I met probably about at least a year ago now, when she came to Mabel and Stanley Publishing, and I'll let her tell you about her book. So hi Kat, lovely to have you on the podcast today.
Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome. So would you like to tell everybody a little bit about you and what you do essentially?
Okay, so I am an award-winning author. I have a master's in education and I love to bring learning to life through books, but the series that I've written more to books and more to organising and more to Mealtimes, which is the one that we published together, they really do help bring learning to life in the home. So I have a master's in education. I've taught in schools all over England. Then I became a nanny. And I found that most parents and most families find routines very difficult, and the main one is meal times. So that's why I've written this book.
Wonderful, wonderful. So it's all really about streamlining processes, but always with an eye on sort of education, development, enrichment, isn't it really?
Absolutely. So, most families, obviously every family, has to feed their children, and it can be really, really difficult. So, rather than just saying you can feed your children this, this, and this, it actually helps your family think about what you can plan for food, how you can create the food together. So, we're talking about development. There's a lot of fine motor development skills in there, but there's also a lot of creativity to be done. You can learn history through food, you can learn science, obviously, through food, and maths is the main one. But on top of that, it's also about cleaning up, clearing the table, using the dishwasher. These skills, these actual skills that your children will need when they grow up, so then they can be independent and thrive when they're adults as well.
Yeah, I mean, massively transferable life skills, aren't they? And just, I mean, I obviously read the book because I helped you to edit it, and there was some fantastic. So, for people who haven't quite heard what Catherine said, it's More to Mealtimes, which is one of the series of books that Catherine's written, and I'll let her, or Kat's written, I'll let her explain a bit more about in a minute. But there was some gorgeous recipes in there, Kat, I have to say.
Thank you. And these are tried and tested recipes. These are things that several children, several families have loved. Even when I was a teacher, I used to do a lot of learning through food in classrooms. So one of the ones in central Manchester, actually, they'd never been to a farm. So I took my class to a farm, and then we saw, obviously, hens were laying eggs. So then we went back to the classroom and we learned how to cook eggs in many different ways. And actually, I've taken that through into my nannying. And every time I get a new family, I help them learn how to make eggy bread, scrambled egg, omelette, because I think these are the easiest ones that you can do. Eggs are so versatile as well. You put them with flour and sugar and you get a cake, or they're just such a great food. But that's what I want to, for the next generation of children, is to be excited about food and empowered and be independent. Even so, now my children who are 10 and 8 and even 6, they would come in and say, I want an omelette, can I cook it? And I go, absolutely, yes, you can.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And I mean, as a, I was a teacher myself for a long time, and experiential learning for me is where it's at. Let's get them out doing it, trying it, that whole, and food is such a sensory thing, isn't it? It's a sociable thing. It's essential for life. You can't live without it. So, I mean, I'm with you. I'm with you there. I mean, what a lovely way. And I always thought, I sort of jokingly would say to people, give me any situation, no matter how boring it is, and I bet you I can find some learning in it. And someone jokingly said, well, what about ironing? And I went, well, that's easy. You've got steam, you've got like personal care, you've got heating and cooling. They were like, oh, okay, I get your point. So that's lovely, isn't it? That we can find learning in what is essentially just everyday stuff, isn't it, really?
Absolutely, and the fact that everyone has to eat all day, every day, and I think it's so sad the generations that we've got now who only know how to put a microwave meal in the oven or in the microwave. Obviously, it's a microwave meal, um, but they don't really know where it's come from, and there's so much salt in it. So the book also talks about gut diversity and how we can try and eat a rainbow, which will mean that you've got all the different vitamins and minerals and things in your body.
Yeah,
But it's putting it in a way that children can understand and love to do it. So obviously, when you have a rainbow, it's all very nice and colourful, and it's something tangible that they can understand. And we also even go into talking about like purple foods help you poo, and all these things which make
yeah,
it more fun as well.
yeah. Pooh's always funny when you're young, I think.
The, yeah, anything to do with poo and wee. So experimenting with asparagus and smelling and sweet corn.
Yeah,
Obviously, you don't
lovely
touch
for
it, but
children.
that's what you
Yeah,
learn. You teach.
yeah. But it's not, there's so much stigma talking about your body and all. But so tell me as well then. So you've written, how many books have you written now, Kat?
So that was my third book
Mm.
that we've done together. My first one was more to books, and my second one was more to organising. And more to organising was about all the routines that you have to do with your family. So the school run, obviously the laundry, but everything. And the main one was meal times. And it just seemed to stick that every time I spoke to a client, they'd be like, actually, the hardest thing for me is getting my children to eat their breakfast in the morning and get to school.
Mm.
And some of the recipes in the book are talking about making them the night before with your children, like overnight oats. And
Yeah,
suddenly the morning is easy and they're more excited to get up because you've put chocolate bits in their overnight oats that also taste like apple crumble.
yeah.
And they actually want to eat it. I just, yeah, obviously I'm very passionate about it.
Yeah, yeah. No, I love it. I love your passion, and I think it's well placed passion because, like you say, we've all got to eat, and making it tangible and fun and exciting. That's brilliant. So, when you were writing the book, how long did it take you to write the book? Would you say?
So this book, I think it took me a few months, this one.
Mm.
But the thing was, I'd had it in my head for a year. It really, I wasn't in control of it. It was like, we need to be
Yeah,
written. And I just sat down and I knew what to do. I think the process was easier for me for my third book because I have written two others before.
yeah,
Um, Especially because I've been into clients' houses and they've told me their problems and I've been living it. So I've been a nanny for 10 years now and I'm doing all these foods and I'm having all the same problems that all the parents are having, that we've got a fussy eater or we've got three children and two of them will eat this vegetable and the other one won't eat that vegetable.
mm,
I've had the children that will only eat fish or not eat cheese. Like, I get it. It's
mm,
frustrating. And the last thing I want to do is make three meals, but also the first thing I want to do is create a time at meal times where it's positive and exciting and fun, because I know myself that how food relationships occur is at meal times. And if
yeah,
someone sat down and forced to eat something or something that they definitely don't like, or they've got a sensory issue, so then it makes them feel sick or ill. And I wouldn't want older siblings to impact younger siblings' thought processes and all of this. So I'm very passionate and I live it every day.
mm.
Like, how can we make this a positive environment so then all children are eating a breadth of
Yeah. No,
of
I love
different
that.
nutrients,
I love that.
and and it doesn't take too much time.
Yeah, well, that's key. We're all kind of time poor, aren't we? So, thinking about the actual writing of the book, did you find it challenging to actually physically write the book, or did you find it quite? I mean, I think you touched on that a little bit. You felt like you sort of the build up to writing had already been done, did you?
Yeah, so I think overall my writing process, it has got easier. I love the first bit. The first draft is my favorite bit. Like when I can be creative and just write it all down and have a bit of fun.
Yeah,
My hardest bit is when you have to go and edit it, which
yeah,
is
yeah,
obviously why we need you.
yeah.
Because that's the bit where you have to go back in. And for me, even though my books are only quite thin, I've got one here.
Mm,
They're not huge. They're not huge, but to me it feels like a huge wood, and you've got to go and check all these trees, and
mm,
there's too many trees.
yeah,
So I think
yeah.
my favorite bit working with someone is finding the right trees that we need to figure out.
Yeah, yeah. And do you know what? I hear it time and time again, Kat, from and I've had some authors who've been a little bit disgruntled about the editing. Well, why have I got to read it again? And why have I, I'm sick of reading my own work. But that, that is the nature of the beast. It's the part that actually, one of my authors recently, she said, I found that harder than writing for sure, because
Oh yeah.
once you've written it, like you say, that's lovely. That's the creative bit. You've blurted it all out. You've been terribly, experimental, and all of your ideas have come out, and now it's like, oh god, now I've got to do my homework, I've got to go back in, and you have to be sort of self-critical, don't you, and you have to be objective,
Yeah.
and then you've got to and sometimes, like for some of the books that I've published for people, one in particular just recently, we must have spent 4 months going
Wow.
back and forth, and it's an arduous process, isn't it? I think people
Absolutely.
grossly underestimate how tricky the whole thing can be and how long it takes. But as I'm sure you will say as well, it's worth doing well, isn't it?
Absolutely. And this is my baby. Well, there are three babies.
Mm,
You want it to be the best it can be. I am humble enough to know that I have spelling mistakes, because when I'm
yeah,
being creative, I'm like tap 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 tap.
yeah,
But also in our process, we noticed I overuse a phrase too many times. So you
yeah,
helped me get rid of that.
yeah,
And so I write very much how I talk. So
yeah,
sometimes it's not it's not perfect on paper. But I think having an editor really does help just find through all those things, because you'll notice different things than I'll notice.
yeah,
And I
yeah,
also know when I'm editing my own work, I skip over sentences because I think I know what I've written, and then
yeah.
it turns out I've written it twice or something.
Yeah. Do you know, it's funny, I was having that conversation this morning with some friends about how it's very difficult to edit your own work because you read what you think you've put down rather than what's actually put
Yeah.
down. And going back to what you said, it's quite funny actually. When I edit people's work, everyone, regardless, will have a little phrase that they overuse, but it's different for every single person. So for some
Yeah.
people, it might be a word like because or so. For other people, it might be like a little kind of phrase, but it's hilarious actually. Every time I read a book, I go, "Oh, that's their favourite phrase. Is this little one right here?" But it's different
Yeah.
for everyone.
I
It's
think
quite
mine was
funny.
actually, wasn't it?
I think
Was
you
it
did use
actually?
actually quite a
Mine.
lot. Yes, actually.
Actually.
But yeah, it's quite funny when you're editing. You sort of got start to. But it's the same when we speak, isn't it? Like, but no, no, I've done it there. Like, I mean, I'm always very critical of people who do that. Like after every sentence. But we do have things like little colloquialisms and little phrases and sayings that we tend to overuse. So it's important that we don't overuse them in our writing. Although I do love the way that recently it is more okay than perhaps it was historically for people to write a little bit more, particularly for business books, to write more how they speak. So as long as it's correct,
Mm,
but that authenticity, I think, is really important because when I'm talking to you, I can hear your passion and I can hear how excited you are about your subject. And I think that's really important. If you're writing a book as part of your marketing funnel, or part of your strategy, as part of you as a business or as a provider, you want people to engage with you, the author, don't you? You want them to hear your authentic voice.
yeah.
I think that's important, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. And one of my most feedbacks and all my reviews on Amazon as well say, I love this book because it's easy to read. I love this book because like they can tell the person behind it.
Mm.
And even actually, when my boyfriend and my mum read it, they're like, it just sounds like you're talking to me, like it's
Yeah,
like I'm in the room. So
Yeah.
I do like that. Another thing on the editing process from before, what was great with having you, especially because you've got an education background, when I was writing something that was maybe a bit too technical, you were like, can you explain what you mean by that? And
Mm.
I wouldn't have known that I needed to explain it until you told me that I needed to explain
Yeah,
it.
yeah. Because sometimes when you've got passion for a subject, like I sometimes will teach people things and think, well, am I being a bit obvious here? But you don't know what you don't know. And I think, particularly with
Mm,
you, you've got all of this experience. You've lived and breathed organizing and, um, setting up systems and all of that kind of thing. So to you, it almost has become second nature, hasn't it? It's just what you do.
yeah,
And it's difficult then sometimes to know, well, all right, I think this is obvious, but to someone who's reading it, it might absolutely not be obvious, which is
yeah,
exactly what you've just said. I've done that quite a few
yeah,
times when I do a bit of kind of tutoring, not tutoring, but guidance for curriculum, like children's activity providers, talking about linking stuff to the curriculum and lesson planning. And some of what I say, I think, well, this is obvious, and then I think, well, no, I taught for 20 years. It becomes obvious when you do it all
yeah,
the time, but
yeah,
it's not to everyone, is it? And I think having your book to be like yours are really accessible, it's kind of no nonsense. And when I was editing it even, I was thinking, oh my god, I love the simplicity of that. And yeah, that's really obvious. Why don't you do that the night before? But until someone tells you, you don't know what you
yeah.
don't know, do you?
Yeah, that's true. And even like optimizing, so thinking of the morning routine, that when you would put the kettle on and when you'd put the things in the toaster and when you would put the drinks out. One of my favorite things that I do, and realized to do it ages ago, was fill up the water bottles for the children for their bags, and then put it on the table so they can drink it at breakfast. It means I don't have to wash everything up. It means I don't forget them because I've cleared the table. It means I clear the table really quickly because I have to put it in their bag. Like it's just optimizing things. So then for me, that's a no brainer. And
Mm,
obviously, if they drink so much at breakfast time, you fill it back up. But it's very rare that they drink that much.
mm,
But you're encouraging them to have their water, and even you can process it so then they put it in their bags when they've finished with their water. So I
mm.
think, yeah, you can optimize really easily.
I love that. It's so simple, isn't it? That's genius in its simplicity. Why do we put water in a cup, wash up the cup, then get the water bottle, put more? I mean, it's just when
Yeah.
you talk about it like that, it's mad, isn't it? It's mad. And I think every parent will know mornings, it doesn't matter how when I sometimes stay at my daughter-in-law's house and her youngest, my youngest grandson is still 9. So the oldest one, he's kind of a bit self-sufficient. He's 15. You need to remind him about stuff because he's very laid back as they are at that age. But the little one, it doesn't matter how early you get up, you are always hurtling out of the door. It doesn't, you can get up 3 hours before and you'll still be hurtling out the door. And it is usually someone running going, have you got your water bottle? Have you got your lunchbox? Have you
Yeah.
got your, it's mad, isn't it? I love it. Yeah. Really
Yeah.
simple. But I love that about that. So I think you've talked a lot about this, but maybe a question before two more questions before we go. The first one is, what have you enjoyed the most about writing your books?
I think, gosh, what the most? I think it is sharing my passion with other people, and it is a way that everyone can access it. So obviously, I've got my services that are quite, like they're priced for a certain level, and not everybody can afford that. But people can pick up the book and read the book and
Mm,
action the book, and that's what I want. I want to be able to help everybody. The other things I've loved is talking to people when they have bought it. So because it is my third book and I go to things like Childcare and Education Expo, Nursery World, people come back and I've got not fans, but like
mm.
readers that come back to me and say, when's your next one coming out? I'm
Oh,
buying it. Like it's not even, they don't even have to think about it. I don't even have to sell it. They've bought the other two and they come back and they buy the other one, and
mm,
it's not that they're buying it and it's not that they're reading it, it's that they love it, and
yeah,
it's helping them. my
yeah,
main my main focus is the children in everything I do. Even when
yeah.
I've started organizing nurseries as well, so I organize their storerooms and we talk about optimization for that. But deep down at the heart of the reason why we're doing the storeroom is because it affects the children positively. So all the books affect the children positively. I was thinking about this the other day. When I was a teacher, I could only in like support 30 children. When I moved to being a nanny, I can only support the children that are in the classroom. But now that I've got my books out there, I know I'm supporting so many families, and there's lots and lots of people who are coming saying, I loved that bit about that book and I've done that now. Or they even, when they're organizing their homes, they're like, you've changed our lives because we didn't realize we could do that.
I love that. Yeah, I was going to ask you about your vision, but I think you've explained it there, and it is myself, when someone comes up and tells you that they've loved your book, that it's such a lovely feeling, isn't it? You feel humbled and proud, and just really grateful that someone's taken the time to read what you've written and to give you feedback and that they've enjoyed it. I mean, that is such a lovely feeling, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm as happy with, the mother who's got a toddler as I am with the education like superstar that runs several nurseries. To me, I'm just so pleased that it's helping lots of different people, because in the end it helps the children.
Yeah, I love that, Kat. I love that. Thank you so much for joining me today. It's been wonderful to talk to you. And if any of you out there have been listening today and have been inspired, I'm sure you have been inspired by the lovely Kat. Her books, the More To series, she's got more to books, more to organising, more to meal times. What's the next one, I must ask, Kat? Is there another one planned?
Well, brand new information. No, there is another one. It, like I said with More to Mealtimes, it takes a year for me to be like, there's an idea and it says I have to be written, I have to be written, I have to be written, and there's something coming. So yes, keep
Watch this
keep
space.
that in mind. There's going to be another More to book, and we've already spoken together. I have written several children's books, but they're just not published. For some reason, I find that much harder to. I think it's because it's my creativity and it's not fact, it's not based on actual things that have happened, and so
Mm.
I'm more scared to get those out, but I know that I have to get my children's books out at some point, but just not yet.
No stopping you, no stopping you. The lovely Kat Lord, who is prolifically filling up our bookshelves as we speak. So thank you so much for joining us today, Kat. It's been wonderful. I wish you every success. The book is great, and I know it will bring lots of joy and happiness to lots of children and lots of families. Educators, it's already doing wonderful things. So thank you for joining us. And anyone listening to the podcast today, if you want to get in touch, you can. Mabel and Stanley at outlook.com. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks for tuning in and see you again soon.
Yeah, thank you for having